We're going to be using Mentimeter today, so I would invite you to just get your phones out and scan this QR code and just let me know when you are there. So let me know when you can see, welcome to the Playschool Masterclass in front of you. And if you have any issues, just give me a shout. Cool. Yasmin, all good? Do you have the slides in front of you? Let's see. Okay, well, I'll leave the QR code there just so we can move on. Today is very much building on last Monday session, the Monday just gone, where we talked about all the different journeys through the sales funnel, through the marketing funnel, through that employee life cycle, and then zoomed out a little bit to actually think about the engines of growth. It's really important to remember that all of these models and frameworks are just ways for you to unpack problems when anything is stalling in your business. And at any point, you can like revisit those models, change the different variables, but they're just ways to help you understand what you can, move and what you can do differently. Today, we're going to actually be a bit more specific in terms of like tools and tactics that we're using to get sales, basically, to make money and to keep our clients in the long run. So I'm just going to ask you to rank these in order in terms of like what you are struggling with the most. So wherever you have Mentimeter open, like on your phone, or if you want to do it on your laptop, you can go to menti.com and enter the code at the top here. So this little code here, 84868, if you prefer. But I'll just give you a minute to think about these. So maybe what you're struggling with the most is generating new leads through marketing. Maybe it's closing a deal once the conversation started. Maybe it's actually just how to set priorities in work so you know what to tackle. Like, is today a content day? Is today a sales day? Is today a chasing day? Maybe it is getting that repeat business. I'm just curious to kind of see what feels like the most urgent need right now. Oops, what's happening there? Cool. So there's definitely a theme around setting priorities. There's definitely a theme around generating leads, closing a deal once a conversation started, which is a lot of that middle of the funnel work, getting repeat business. That's very much understanding the kind of like growth engine and then experimenting. Cool. And I think that kind of makes sense for what we're going to cover today, and also like hopefully what we can go into deeper in the one-to-ones. But yeah, prioritization is definitely linked to your targets and your goals and the data that you're measuring. I like to use, my trackers to help me prioritize. So I look at my sales funnel, and when there are very few leads at lead stage, I'm like, okay, this is a content week because I need to generate more leads. When there's a lot of conversations stuck in the middle, my priority is getting those conversations in the middle through to the next stage. So this is just a reminder for me, if you haven't really set your sort of success metrics, your goals, your targets, really spending a bit of time doing that will help you prioritize. Okay, cool. This is super helpful. I'll make sure I send you the deck afterwards. Of these 6 things, what would you like to know more about? I mean, again, it feels like a bit repetitive, but I just kind of wanted to dive a bit deeper. Is it specifically getting the leads into the top of the funnel? Is it ways to keep them really warm, interesting ways to keep the conversations going? Is it actually more about pitching your business? Like, do you know what? I'm actually getting into the door, or I'm going, into another conversation with a client I've worked with, but however it is that I'm proposing or pitching doesn't seem to turn into a yes. Is it actually negotiating? So you're getting the pitch, you're having the conversation, but when it comes to getting the price you want, you're just not quite getting there. Is it actually capturing data? Like, okay, I've worked with this business. I love working with them. I want to keep working with them, but I don't know if they found it valuable. I don't know how to keep that going. And I guess similarly to that, Is it more around, I've got a community of people who are aware of me, on LinkedIn, on my email newsletter, in my database, but I haven't found that strategy to keep them engaged so that as they move on to new businesses and as they move on to new roles, they always remember that I'm here to support them. So I'll just give you a minute to think about that. And as we go through the deck, I'm going to share strategies that I'm using for every stage of the funnel. And I'm going to make sure that I just pause at each section so that you have a chance to ask how you can apply them to your business, or share a bit more about what you're already using tools and tactics wise that you want to get better at. Okay, cool. So it looks like a lot of us want to know more about how we actually keep these conversations warm and moving them towards closing a deal, as well as engaging repeat customers or repeat business, and then also getting new leads. Cool, awesome. That sounds good. Beyond what I've covered today so far, is there anything else that you would like us to discuss? So we're definitely going to talk about generating leads at the top of the funnel. We're definitely going to talk about how to keep these conversations warm and moving on to close. We're definitely going to talk about how to do that sort of nurturing of relationships so that you can continue getting repeat business from your customers. We're going to talk about how to prioritize that work, which is of course very individual for all of us. And we're going to talk about experimenting, like different tactics, different things you can try. But is there anything else on the sort of growth, sales, marketing, social media front that is very timely for you now to put on the table? Let me know.
Yeah, the right approach to, sorry, was it a good time to, okay, the right approach to pricing, because a client has just asked me to send some prices.
Yeah.
And I have no idea how to do that.
Got it.
Yeah. So even like, how do you lay it out?
Yeah.
How do you present optionality and not turn off the customer with too massive of a price? Should it be a model? Should it be a deck?
Yeah.
Someone also mentioned to me that they never send like anything physical, well, digital, because typically people share with competitors. So they do like a pricing exercise on the call and have like a handout ready for them if they're the budget holder, or it's ready to go to a budget holder. So I'm getting a lot of different approaches, and it'll be good to understand how do you massage that pricing stage.
Okay, cool. So
Thank you.
when I get to like tools and tactics for like middle of the funnel and like
Yeah.
pushing it towards close, I will like revisit this.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Pleasure. Anything else? Okay. Well, feel free to unmute at any point or ask questions. So as I said, I'm just going to spend this time giving you very specific tools and tactics to take your leads through the sales funnel and beyond that point of sale into like an ongoing long-term relationship. I think the goal for all of us is to have these really reliable connections with people that bring us into their business, bring us into their next businesses, so that, we can say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we've had such a great time working together on all these different things. I'm going to actually talk to you about what's in my sales and marketing stack. So specifically, these are the software tools I'm using. These are the scheduling tools that I'm using. Don't feel like you have to copy me. I'm just giving you an example of my workflow. You can then go out and look at competitors, substitutes, alternatives. I'm going to give you some insight into what data I'm tracking at each of those stages so that I know what I need to prioritize, whether I'm hitting my goals. But also, it's looking at that data that then makes me think, do you know what? Let me try something different. And that's what an experiment is. An experiment is trying something different. For a long time, I was using LinkedIn to do success stories. And then I was like, everyone's doing these like sob stories on LinkedIn, like these clickbaity, oh no, I started crying when, ... And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to give in. If you can't beat them, join them. Ever since I started doing more of these kinds of stories, I see more engagement. So, this is an experiment that has worked. But I was also doing an experiment on Instagram where I was like, I'm going to post 3 reels a day, POV this, blah, 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 that, and see if that will generate more engagement. And it worked for like a week, but then the same formula tailed off. So, some experiments work, some experiments don't. At the end of the day, you have data you didn't have before, information you didn't have before. So they're all valuable, in my opinion. So I wanted to just start by getting a read of the room. What tools are you already using? Are you using CRM systems like HubSpot? Are you using project management like Notion or Asana? Are you using design tools like Canva, generative AI like Claude or ChatGPT, scheduling tools like Calendly, newsletter tools like Substack or LinkedIn, email campaign tools like ConvertKit or LinkedIn? I'm just curious what your repertoire, your toolkit already looks like, so I can get a sense of where in this journey you are.
We can only do one.
Oh, really? Oh, oops. That's my bad. Sorry, I should have given you a different style of slide. Sorry about that. Let's see if I can quickly change it. Multiple choice, multiple select. Let's see. Oh, I think because it's already been filled. Oh, wait, hang on. Clear results. Oh no. Okay, do you know what? Just tell me what you're already using. That will be easiest. I don't have to clear the results so I can still give this to you.
Yeah, so I'm using CRM stuff, project management. So we use Notion and I use Asana personally. Design tools, I use Pitch, not Canva. Always use Perplexity. I switched to Perplexity now because of my field, because it gives you
More references. Yeah.
Exactly, which is good for like pitches. I found clients really always want the paper.
Nice.
Calendly, I've started to use again.
Nice.
But for some reason, there's this big backlash against Calendly on socials. My goal is to use newsletter tools.
Okay.
We use Klaviyo and the mix of Klaviyo and MailChimp.
Nice. How about you, Rachel? And then we'll go into Ramat.
I'm so shit with this. I use Canva. I use Gemini. I kind of use Calendly, but no one ever clicks it. It's kind of really.
Okay, thank you. How about you?
I use Canva for design stuff. I use a mix of ChatGPT and Gemini for just, sometimes one's better than the other. I've started to go back to using like Acuity, I think it's called, instead of Calendly. So I started doing coaching again, so I've using that as my booking tool. Newsletter, I use MailChimp at present, and it's funny you say about email campaigns because I don't use either or, but I recently just looked, like literally last night, looked at ConvertKit, which have now rebranded as just Kit, which I didn't know. Yeah, I was like, oh, interesting. But actually, I was thinking I could potentially use that for some of the campaigns that I'm doing outside. So haven't used a campaign tool per se, but I'm considering that.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing, everyone. And, I'll be honest, there have been times in my business where I had the team to have a workflow for all of these things. And there are times where I didn't. And my team's quite small right now. So I'm definitely more obsessed with systems and tools that allow me to scale and, give the sense that my team hasn't downsized when it has. And if I actually think of all of the things we've been discussing, like that sales journey, that marketing funnel, that repeat business, long-term life cycle, in an ideal world, a project management tool like Notion or Asana will clearly outline all of your goals. So like we want to hit £500,000 this year. That's roughly, 180 in Q1, Q2 will be busier, Q3 will be dead, Q4 will make up the bulk of it. I'm thinking that that's going to be roughly coming from, 5 clients each quarter. That means we're going to be roughly speaking to 50 to 60-ish conversations that then convert into that. So the project management tool, Notion, Asana, whatever it is kind of where like the story of your success lives and where all those little indicators of health are. And then the CRM is just what's helping you track that number. Like, ooh, so and so's DM me on LinkedIn, get them into the CRM. So and so's sent me an email, get them into the CRM. Just gonna add Sharon here. And hey, Sharon, don't worry, we're recording everything, so you'll be able to watch back everything you've missed. We're just talking about tools that we use for sales and marketing. Tools like Canva are really helpful because you can actually put your pitch decks into there. You can also use them for designing any assets. Sometimes people are like, I don't want a deck, I want a one-pager. Canva can convert a deck into a one-pager. Sometimes you want to put a pretty testimonial onto LinkedIn. Sometimes you want to make a flyer for your webinar, your event, a nice little flyer to promote the panel you're speaking at. Canva has templates for everything. So it looks like you've hired a designer, but you just typed in a search term. Generative AI, I think, is really useful in terms of making those free resources that you use in the middle of the funnel. So we make guides like 10 ways to make a meeting more inclusive. And when I can't be bothered to think of guides, I just go to ChatGPT and I'm like, what would be a good cheat sheet for a diversity and inclusion officer? Or what are 10 ways that a manager can challenge gender bias during performance review season? Okay, do it again, but make it sound friendlier. Do it again, but make it sound more concise. And then you take what ChatGPT has given you and you plug it into that Canva template where you search for, give me a 10 ways to do template. So these are things that will, help you. And then in terms of scheduling tools, I find scheduling tools like Calendly helpful. One, because they can reflect my time blocking, right? Like if I need Monday to make content and I need Friday to play catch up, I can set it up so that I only take calls Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And if I have other commitments, classes, courses, I can block those out. But what's even nicer about Calendly is you can actually set up email automations for every type of meeting. So I think, Yasmin, you've used my Calendly before. So you've seen that you sort of get like before the meeting, a little reminder. And then after the meeting, hey, thanks for making time. Here are a bunch of resources that Hustle Crew have available to the public. So if you're using a tool like Calendly to nurture leads, it's a really good way to signpost to like your social channels and other resources. Similarly, newsletter tools like Substack or LinkedIn, I think, are a really powerful way to keep your community engaged. People who are in the middle of your funnel probably are connected to you on LinkedIn or on your newsletter. People who you've worked with before are probably connected to you on your newsletter. So even if on a quarterly basis, that's literally once every 3 months, you're just doing a roundup of big news stories from your industry, big learnings from your industry, testimonials, case studies, wins, that might coincide with timing where they're actually thinking about next month's programs or next year's suppliers. And when you have more time to look at tools like ConvertKit or MailChimp, you can start to segment your audience. So you might have an audience that is either across different industries or across different roles, and the use case of your work is different according to each one. Some people are actually the manager of a team, so you can create content that's going to make them a better manager. Some people are just learning and development or marketing or employer brand, and maybe it's a different messaging to them. So using email campaign tools can help you segment your audience. I don't actually do that, but a lot of people I respect and admire do, and I think it's cool. I'll just pause in case there are any questions so far. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to literally explain what I am doing and what I see other founder friends doing for every stage of the funnel. So we spent a lot of time talking about generating sales leads. So how do I actually get people to be aware of who I am and then be interested who I am and actually start talking to me about what I do and the amazing work that we do? And this is, very much from a B2B angle, what I think works, but we're all B2B, so that's relevant for us. So the first thing is, so using a platform like LinkedIn, not to sell your product, but rather to tell the story of who you are, because this is where people build trust. When I was a VP in a tech company, most people just wanted to hire their friend's wife or their buddy or their nephew. And if I had to come to the table and go, no, we're going to bring in Ramat, we're going to bring in Rachel, they'd be like, who the hell are they? Because I'd rather bring in Quentin or whatever. And I was like, well, I'll tell you who they are. They're actually really competent and really good and blah, blah. And the first thing they're going to do is go on LinkedIn and search you or Google you. And when that page comes up and it's like, I got into this work because I am passionate about X and I believe in Y. And, I won't sleep until I make this change. They're like, what a high-spirited, passionate person. I'm really intrigued. But if they Google you, and it's a bunch of generic abstract statements about your products, like industry leading, you know, results driven, blah, blah. It's like, you know, you need to give that human story that builds trust. So I really, really do believe, you know, it's like what Simon Sinek says in his viral TED Talk. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Because lots of people do what you do, right? You know, I'm not going to stand here and pretend that I invented training or I invented consulting. But people work with me because they like why I'm in this game. I'm in this game because I was affected by the problems I'm now teaching people how to solve, and I'm passionate about it. And I genuinely believe it can be done in an engaging way. Like, I genuinely believe it can be, I'm not going to say it's as fun as a festival or a rave, but it can be about as fun as it gets to be sitting with your team staring at a screen. So I'm challenging you to think about, what stories have you been telling so far to bring that attention and interest into the top of your funnel? And is there an opportunity to experiment and adapt and tell stories a different way? Like, how personal can you get? Can you reflect on a personal experience that relates to the problem you're solving? Can you invent an interaction you had with a friend or a loved one that reinforces the value of your work? It doesn't have to be true about you, but it could be true hearsay that you package as your own observation or reflection. And then the next thing I want to remind you is, it's not always about the story of who you are and where you're doing this work. Sometimes it's the story about why this is a challenge. One of my most viral LinkedIn posts this year was me talking about a news story I read, which I'd found through a Google alert, about a Black teacher that took her employer to employment tribunal and won. And she basically said that the staff were really racist, not just to her, but to the minority of Black students in this small English town where she taught. And I was using it as an example of why it's really important for teams that are diverse or teaching, you know, in diverse communities, to have an awareness of bias. And so many people talked about it in the comments, talked about bias they faced at school, talked about how shocked they were to hear about this. So sometimes the story you need to tell is the story of, like, the bigger issue, you know, showing people that this is a bigger issue. It's not just their team, it's not just their company. So yeah, my challenge for you is, think about the stories you're telling on LinkedIn, on your platforms, on your newsletter. Are you also telling the stories of how the problem you're solving is showing up in spaces that people maybe don't realize, but completely understand? You know, a school is something we can all relate to, but were people thinking about how bias in the employees of a school are showing up? Sometimes I do stories about bias in software, bias in products, you know, bias in sports, and it's just about a different way to bring that message home. The next thing I want to talk about is tracking those leads through your CRM. So it's really important, again, that you are, every time someone is commenting, engaging, whatever it is, pop them into that CRM system. Ooh, John from Imperial, you know, made a comment on this. Let me pop them into my CRM so I can now make an effort to engage him directly. Hey, John, I noticed you commented on that post. Are these the topics that you and your team are discussing right now? And this is the same of inbound leads that you're getting through your contact form, your emails, your DMs. You know, I try to make a habit once a week of looking at my CRM system, you know, that sort of top of the funnel stage, which I call lead, and saying, who am I talking to right now that isn't listed here? Let me quickly scan through Instagram again, scan through LinkedIn again. Let me quickly, like, look through my emails and make sure everyone who has, you know, who is actually in conversation is being tracked here, because I've got an automation that makes sure everyone that fills in my contact form automatically goes there, but not everyone fills in my contact form. Or sometimes it's an old client that jumped into an email thread from 2 years ago saying, hey, listen, can we chat again? So I just want to make sure I really have visibility on all of those things. Often the top of the funnel has more volume in it than you realize. You just haven't put them all into some kind of tracker. I've already touched on using scheduling tools like Calendly, but, you know, these can be a really powerful way. You can leave your Calendly link anywhere. leave it on LinkedIn, leave it on your website, leave it on your contact form. Not everyone is going to use it, but some people will. And I literally have a call next week with someone in a company who found my Calendly link somewhere, and just put in a few words about how she's keen to get to know more about the work that we do. So leaving these around for people to find can be really helpful. Your contact form, your Calendly. And if you want to make it scalable for you, I really recommend using email templates, any kind of message template. So you might have a standard little 2 sentences for when people engage with you on LinkedIn, where you're like, hey, thanks for engaging with my post. It looks like you're doing really interesting work in your team. Shall we connect and talk more about X or Y or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think it's really important for you to think about how you can make your work easier. And if there are messages that you're constantly saying or constantly returning to, just have literally like a sticky note on your laptop where they're all there, or a Google Doc where you copy and paste. The same is true for those first calls that you have. What is the important information to know to help your sales journey, right? You want to probably know if this is the kind of work they spend money on, if they're the kind of person who can make a decision about budget, if this is something that's going to be happening in the next few months, or is this just purely speculative? Because this also goes back to that point around priorities. It's hard for you to know how to prioritize if you don't have the right information. But knowing that one conversation you're having needs to make a decision this month, and another conversation you're having doesn't even know if it's going to happen, is an immediate way for you to prioritize. Like, okay, well, I'm going to focus on the client that wants to make a decision this month. The other thing I was going to say was, if you are using a tool like Calendly, email automation, and to be honest, you don't even need to use Calendly for this, but you can have something set up where every time you finish a call with someone, something is going out to them saying, thanks for your time. To find out more about ways we've helped companies like yours, here's a case study, here's a testimonial, follow us on LinkedIn. As simple as that. I'm just going to pause there so I can create space for any questions about getting leads into the top of the funnel, or reflections on challenges here. Okay, well, we can always come back to that. Let's just talk a bit about middle of the funnel then. So what I think is really helpful is if you can use your CRM to track when you last contacted someone. Another way that you can do this is just like have a multiple inbox set up in your Gmail or whatever email client you use, and every inbox can represent a different stage. So you can have like one inbox that's like recently contacted, and every time you reach out to a client, you move it to that. And then maybe that recently contacted section is a place that you return to every week or so, or every couple of weeks, to then go, oh, okay, so they haven't actually been contacted for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks. Whatever it is, getting into that habit of designing a system, inbox, CRM, whatever, to help you gauge, okay, who am I talking to? When did I last talk to them, is really helpful. Now, I find this quite challenging too. I'm not going to lie. Like, I don't really think I'm in the kind of business where I can chase someone multiple times a week. Most of the people I'm dealing with don't have that luxury of time. Once I know that it's a decision they're looking to make in the next month or two, it's more realistic for me to chase them up every fortnight, or even once a month if it's a longer time scale. So it's really important for you to just, get a steer on what is that right frequency to nudge people. Email templates can help you chase easily. And I would recommend to not just say, are there any updates, but rather like give them something. So you can set up Google alerts for things like advice for managers, ways to make teams feel safe, employee trends, whatever it is. And then you can have a template that's like, hey, just wanted to share this interesting new research I saw with you about XYZ. Happy to like unpack it together on a call if you think there are ways that this could like apply to your team. So you're kind of doing a bit of that free consulting to get closer to a bigger project. Of course, you have to decide what's sustainable for you and what's manageable for you. But, you know, as someone that used to sign off budget, it's a lot more interesting for me to reply to an email that's offering me something than just asking me, you know, do you have an update yet? Because to be honest, if I had an update, I would get back to you. Most likely I'm waiting to get something signed off or whatever. Another thing that I think is really underrated is actually like following company pages or following people on LinkedIn, because then you can also reach out like, hey, I saw you're hiring for this. I just shared it in my community. I'll let you know if anyone comes back to me. Or, oh, I saw you're expanding to this region, or you've just launched a report on this. I never mentioned to you, but we've actually done work in that region. Or, you know, I don't think I told you, but we actually have a case study about that challenge. So I wanted to share with you in case there's anything helpful, you know, for you and your team here. So these are all the different things that you can do to develop the middle of the funnel. Middle of the funnel is literally where you're waiting for an answer. But no one wants to just be chased for an answer, right? This is where you really show what kind of relationship you want to build. And the final thing I put on this slide is this is where you can offer free resources, whether that is, you know, webinars, hey, I'm speaking at this panel, hey, here's a guide. Now, one of the things that you might have noticed is you can actually use a lot of the top of the funnel stuff in your middle of the funnel, right? So if you are on social media anyway, I don't know, creating stuff on LinkedIn, telling stories, sharing testimonials, sharing assets, etc., etc., etc. Why don't you also reuse some of that stuff in the middle of the funnel? Like if you're making guides that you post on social media saying, hey, download this guide and to get an email address, or like 10 ways to do X to get people, you know, engaging with you on LinkedIn, you can use those same assets in middle of the funnel. So you can go back into these email chains and be like, hey, in case you missed it, I put together this resource, I put together this guide. So I often see where, you know, as much as possible, I can blend my lead generation content making with my like middle of the funnel, keeping leads warm. So for example, the webinars that I do every other month are an opportunity for me to bring awareness to our work and get people to test us out, see what we're like. But I also use the webinar to re-engage conversations that have died. Like, hey, it's been a few months since we spoke. Hope you're doing well. I'm sure you're super busy. Just wanted to let you know we've got this webinar coming up. Please come along, invite your team, etc. So what would be that thing for you that crosses over into both valuable for generating leads at the top of the funnel, but also valuable for keeping leads warm in the middle of the funnel? And that should be a priority for you, whether that's an online event, whether that's a resource, whether that's an IRL event, I don't know, but whatever it is, that should be a priority for you because it's kind of ticking multiple boxes. I'm just going to pause there. Any questions or reflections on that?
No questions, but I think it's just like a good reminder that we can repurpose things, because sometimes, like, I admit I'm like rubbish at the moment at just doing the thing, and sometimes you can just repurpose what you've already done in a different space, in a different way, and I just hadn't kind of added those two dots together. So it's a great reminder for us.
Nice. So let's just talk a bit about tools and tactics to close deals. If you use presentation tools like pitch.com or Canva, you can like track views, and that's quite a good time to, you know, jump back into the conversation when you notice that it's been viewed again, going back into the email chain. Hey, it's been a few weeks. Just wondered if there was any more info I could share, any questions that may have been asked by your team. I always think, you know, with things like pricing, as Yaz was asking about earlier, it's so important to take people on that journey when it comes to pricing, and do that face to face or virtually. You know, I like to show people in my proposals how I calculate the pricing. So it's like, how do we calculate pricing? And that comes before the price. And I literally say the time that we'll spend creating the content, compensating our facilitators, you know, and a fair way, the pre-training support that we will give you, the on-the-day support that we'll give you, the after support and information that we'll give you. So I literally make this like shopping list of all of the things that we do so that they can understand before they see the number. In your case, with software, you have to really think about where you fall in line with like other similar products, because that's how your price will be evaluated. And, you know, it could be that you do a sort of pricing calculator for them, you know, a very basic Excel sheet where it's like a very high number, which is just the license per head. And then you kind of say how many people are getting the license. And then you can make them feel special by saying, and I'm going to apply a discount. But I would make sure that like whatever price you're starting at is high enough to cover your operating costs and the account management that goes into it, right? Because software is actually in the end quite high if you think of Salesforce and things like that, because you're getting some kind of dedicated support. So it's not the software that's expensive, it's the people that help you get the most out of the software that's expensive. Another thing for you to maybe do before you actually give them the pricing, and I say this all the time with clients who are like, just tell me the price, just tell me the price, just tell me the price. And I'll be like, well, actually, the price really depends on the client in terms of how they're using it, how many people are using it, how long they're using it for, etc. So I can't really give you the price until I know the answers to that. And you can either tell me them on email or we can jump on a call and it's a lot easier. So, you know, defend your position when it comes to presenting the price. The more you understand their budget, their preferences, the better. And another thing I think is really important, just as we get to the bottom of this slide, you know, play the long game. If you are price oriented right now and you just want the cheapest chip solution, I'm not for you. Like, good luck. I would honestly rather not have the money than work for someone that is pushing on the price point and just making me feel a bit exploited. And I will often say that with people where I'll just like, totally appreciate that, you know, this might not, you know, be in line with your budget right now. You know, we're all about the long-term partnership. We're all about delivering impact. We're about protecting our reputation. You know, maybe there's a time in future where we'll work together, you know, wish you all the best. And there are times where I've said that where people have then come back afterwards and been like, oh, we were actually let down by our supplier. Can we come and work with you? So yeah, I think pricing is definitely a constant evolution, and it's more art than science, the way people react to how you present it. And accepting that is like the first part to getting better at negotiating. Like, it is more art than science. So if you're a stylist and you want to make someone feel good in how you style them, the more you know about them, the better. If you're an interior designer, right, you need to know their vibe to design it well. And negotiating is the same. What is their attitude towards spending on this stuff already? What is their history of it? And how much of a priority is this? And also, what are their team's needs? Because then you can reframe it. I literally had to do a sales call earlier today where there's been a grievance. So in my mind, I was like, the most important things for her to hear now are where we've worked with a grievance. So I was like, okay, well, you know, we worked with this client where there was a grievance, and that was the case. So we did that. We worked with another company where there was a grievance and that. And when we got to the end of the call, she was like, oh my God, you literally just like hit the nail on the head there, because that's exactly what we're dealing with. If I hadn't taken that time to ask her explicitly, you know, before I jump into this proposal, can you just share a bit more about the context? Like, you've spoken about the fact that there's been tension, but what were the actual dynamics, you know, confidentially? And it was through her revealing that, you know, revealing those, you know, preferences for what it has to do. Yeah, that helped me get there. I'm just going to pause. Questions?
Can I ask? I know that I can never ask what's your budget. I never really have the guts to do it. But do you think do have, because I always think whatever they're going to say their budget, they're going to ask me how much it is, you know, they'll say, well, what do you normally charge?
Yeah.
And it feels like a bit of it feels wrong. I don't know, it feels wrong asking what's your budget, because then I don't know, I'm not really making this clear, but do people, when you ask people that, are they like, this is what the X is what our budget is?
I mean, I have different ways of asking it. I often say these things like, oh, I was just curious, like, how much do you usually spend on this? Or like, or I'll have a question before that question. I'll be like, I was just curious, like, have you done anything like this before? Like when you've had this issue before, or when you've had this event before, or when you've had this thing before, have you ever done anything? And sometimes I'll be like, well, actually, yeah, once we brought in a motivational speaker, or actually, yeah, once we did this retreat. I'm like, oh, cool, that's really interesting. And what was that like? And how did it work? Oh, okay, cool. And how much did you spend? You know, so there are different ways that you can like get to that. And I think for you, it's about having that confidence to say, I don't have set pricing. And knowing that and being honest with that. And I can be honest with that. I don't have set pricing because not everyone just wants the, you know, off the shelf thing, right? It's like McDonald's. Okay, fine. You want the cheeseburger, get the cheeseburger. Oh, you want to add extra pickles, extra lettuce, extra ketchup? Well, okay, that's kind of different. So I think it's really important for you to also have the confidence and say, you know, every client has a different experience. And you can say like, you know, I can say like on average, the lower end, if you're just getting the most basic package, blah, 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 it's probably going to cost you, you know, around 5K. And that will give you, you know, a recording and this and that. But again, if you want it super tailored, a lot of consultation before and after, which I've done with companies like Amazon and blah, 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 you know, then you could be looking at, you know, around 10K. But what you're getting with that is, you know, access to that for a whole year, plus additional support afterwards. So, you know, you can say with confidence, like, you know, it really depends. It depends what you want. If I say to British Airways, I want to go to New York, tell me how much. No, just tell me how much. You're like, as in the cheapest or like the most pleasurable, the most nice, you know what I'm saying? So maybe it's about you going on that journey yourself to believe that what you are delivering ranges in impact and therefore ranges in price. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's a really good answer. Thank you.
Yeah. And like, don't just ask, like I said, like, I don't know to say what's the budget. I always just build up to that. Have you done the similar work before? What was your experience? Was it good? Was it bad? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? How much did you pay for it? Did you think it was good value? Oh, that's really interesting. Cool. So I'm just going to kind of go through these quickly so I can save some time for questions. Once you have made someone your customer, it's really important to, you know, if you can and if it's relevant, create a space for them to stay up to date with the work. So at Hustle Crew, we like make a client folder on Google Drive, and that's where you can see like the schedule of all the trainings we're going to do, information about the team. Look, whether or not you click it, we've made it. That's already immediate value for you. We share resources before the workshop, an email. Sometimes we use Google Form because it allows us to track who's actually used the resources or not. We collect feedback through Google Form. We have Canva design templates that allow us to share that feedback back. We offer people a call. They very rarely take it, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that they were offered it. And we add them to the mailing list for future events. So this is where I'm talking about that community building, turning people into legacy clients. These are the tools that I use. So as I mentioned, I use Google Alerts on topics like anti-racism, Black women in the workplace, likability penalty, all the things that brought me into this work and all the things I'm really passionate about. And then I either use them to write my newsletter, to write social media posts, or to engage clients. Canva for designs, later.com for scheduling. So I love to use Sundays and Mondays to just schedule content. Later.com shows me, you know, when my audience is online, so I can put things to go out then. Zoom for webinars, yet another mail merge, which is just literally a plugin in a Google Sheet and Gmail for doing my webinar outreach. So any of you who have attended my masterclasses or webinars will know that I will like email you like subject line, Ramat, thanks for coming. You know, body, dear Ramat, thanks so much for coming. Like that is a mail merging tool so that I can email all 70 people that came. And that tool also allows me to track who opened, track who clicked. so I can do specific follow-ups to those folks individually. And then, as I said, I do have a weekly Substack, which has about 3,500 subscribers. It has a really high open rate, 34%. So every week, like over 1,000 people are reading that and, you know, learning about our webinars, clicking on things. So, you know, do not underestimate email. Like, do not underestimate email. And then I put the same copy of the Substack into LinkedIn, which doesn't get as much engagement, but it still gets, you know, a few hundred people reading it every week. Ramat.
So, question on emails, because my emails are, my email newsletter is a MailChimp, so people will have had to opt in for it, as opposed to Substack and LinkedIn, which people don't necessarily have to opt in for. They can, actually, I don't know for Substack, but yeah, I'm assuming like anyone can sign up without. I guess my question is, I'm currently doing MailChimp, and that's where like my open rate's great, it's like 60%, but I need to funnel people into that MailChimp. Do you think that have you chosen Substack over something like MailChimp for any particular reason, or is it just what you happen to be using?
I used to use MailChimp and I moved to Substack because Substack has more of like a community aspect to it, so that other Substackers can like recommend you. So I feel that it's not just relying on me to drive people to it. Other people can also find me through Substack. So that's why I chose Substack. Yeah.
All right, cool. Good to know. Thank you.
Pleasure. And then, oops, sorry. Yeah, the final thing I was going to say is last week I did a webinar called Grow Your Audience and Generate Leads, which is very much about the sort of top of the funnel, like what works, but also how to do it in a sustainable way. Because nobody wants to spend hours on Instagram and LinkedIn, okay? No one. And also when we go back to that idea of prioritizing, I actually think that social media and content creation is not the high priority work. It's important, but I think what's much higher priority is actually getting a hold of your data and actually looking at how many leads at the top of the funnel, how many leads at the middle of the funnel. Okay, what is going to be a very personalized, delightful way for me to re-engage this conversation? What's going to be a really personalized, delightful way for me to go back to that person I worked with a year ago and try and get them to give me 5 minutes of their time so I can gauge if they want to work together next year. You know, that's the work that my team and I are doing right now. Yes, social media is important, but a much bigger project that's happening in the background right now is actually doing very detailed research on all of the, you know, 60, 70 plus clients we've worked with in the last 2 years who have not worked with us in the last 6 months, and actually mapping out, do we still have a decision maker there? Okay, great. Let's start building out that message. If we don't, where have they gone? And can we now start reaching out to them there? And you know, because I have a longer sales cycle with businesses that take a longer amount of time to decide, that's more priority work for me, like actually having these very specific tailored conversations with people who already are familiar with us, already spent money with us, and just try to understand, is there scope for us to get more money from them in the future, by making them feel special and also by showing them the improvements that we've made. So like, just as an example, in case it's helpful, we're in the process of like taking all the feedback we've ever received and using that to show what has changed since these clients have worked with us. Like, hey, since you last worked with us, we actually like set up the workshop differently, the learning objectives are different, the aftercare is different. I want to show them the journey that we've been on and that we've taken their feedback on board. Does that make sense? Yeah. So when it comes to your priorities, make sure that you're not spending time on things that are important but aren't as urgent as other things, right? And if sales is really urgent for you right now, then sales is actually quite specific. Like sales is very much people, real life people, not like imaginary pretend people that you're going to reach through this LinkedIn post, but real life people where you already have their email, where you've already started messaging them on LinkedIn, who you now need to understand, you know, on a probability scale up to 100%, what is the percentage we are going to work together in the next 6 months, 12 months. And you can only do that through these very small things that don't scale. Cool. This is just sort of Q&A time now. Feel free to go off mute. Feel free to anything, type it in.
Will we have access to these recordings after?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, cool, thank you.
Pleasure. And I'll export the deck as well.
Can I ask how with the CRM, I've got one, but I don't update it enough. Yeah. Do you sort of update it as you go? Do you do it weekly? How much do you
I'm really very much a seasonal worker, if that makes sense. So like in August when things were quiet, I probably looked at my dashboard like once or twice a week. Now that things are like picking up again, I check it like daily, even like multiple times a day. I'm a lot more aggressive with making sure that like the status of everything is up to date. I mean, I definitely check it at least once a week because I take my team through it. I think it's really important for them to see, I'll just bring it up quickly. I think it's really important for them to see like where we are as a business. Sorry, I don't know why I can't find it right now. Oh, no, here we go. Cool. But yeah, it's really about you, right? Like what works for you, what will make sense for you, because this dashboard is there to be useful for you, right? So yeah, it's really helpful for me to like take my team, through this journey. There's also different views. If you are interested in using Notion, like you can view things in a table form. You can view things by like who you need to reach out to. You can prioritize deals based on value, whatever makes sense to you. But yeah, I check it in my team meeting, and then I personally check it now like every day, just so I can make sure things are up to date. I'm like updating the value of the deal as I get more information from the calls and the conversations, last contact, etc. But yeah, I would say just do what works for you.
And did you build out your Notion dashboard yourself, or was it a template that you used that you kind of adapted for your
So
needs?
I started out with templates because Notion has so many good templates. Like that is literally a Notion template, or it started out as that. But then I worked with Frances of the Notion Bar.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
Yeah, to actually bring her into the company, watch how we work, and then create some like automations for us to just make it a bit better and also to make it look prettier. So yeah, we invested in some VIP days with her. Cool. Notion has worked really well for us, but it's been a journey to get there. Notion's kind of a system we introduced like 21 or 22, and slowly over time have moved everything to it. Yeah, we've experimented with different things, Slack and Asana, HubSpot, but we've just really happy with Notion. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So I will be sending the deck and the recording to you. I know there's a lot there, but I would suggest that you do try to spend some time today while it's fresh in your mind, kind of interrogating your current practices alongside what we've spoken about. So really have that deep think on, am I clear on what my priorities are, sales-wise, growth-wise, marketing-wise? Do I feel like the way that I'm working, blocking out time, my tasks for the week are reflecting those goals? And if not, what can I do differently to reach them? And then also, just spending a bit of time thinking, my theory is the most likely customer is someone who already knows you, right? Versus someone who doesn't. So another question for you to ask yourself is like, honestly speaking, have I done enough to build a community of people who already know me? And I'm not saying that you have to like have made this magical brunch that they all come to, but I'm just saying, is there even just in the most basic form, a list of names on a doc somewhere where you're like from 21 to 22 to 23 to 24, these are the names of people that I have worked with, that you can now say, are they still at the same company or not? If they are, great, I've got their email. If not, do I have them on LinkedIn? Can I find them on LinkedIn? Because, you know, a lot of us are here because we are thinking about the bottom line and we are thinking about growth. And it's going to be a lot easier to tap into that growth from customers who already trust you and already have that rapport with you than people where you're kind of starting from scratch, buying that trust and buying that journey. And I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's just going to be easier. And if they're not people who have already bought something from you, maybe they're people who worked with you in another role who don't realize that you now do this and can bring you in to do this where they are. But yeah, like that's the big homework, I think, to take away from this. How are all of these steps in the journey relating to the people who are already in my network, already in my connections, so that I can keep bringing them back to the top of the funnel in their new role or in their new company, take them all the way through to the bottom, and then in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, when I'm relevant again, because it's Women's History Month or whatever, bring them back to the top of the funnel and take them through that journey. So is that helpful?
So helpful. Thank you.
Nice. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, I know I'm going to see some of you for one-to-ones. As soon as the recording's ready, I'll email it to you. If you think of any other questions, let me know.